Hey yo, this is Sensei Fouché. Welcome to the neighborhood. Let's chop it up. Yo, we're gonna go straight up freestyle, as we would say, or off the top of the dome, to be more specific. Forget about that freestyle thing. Let's scratch that. We're going straight off the top of the dome right here on this conversation because, you know what I'm saying, this is so personal and so connected that I don't even need to, have notes and break down a script when it comes to having a conversation on this topic right here. And the topic that we about to drop today on these real notes right here, if y'all pay attention right quick, is how honesty has you not holding the bag. And you're like, yo, Sensei Fouché. Like, what does that mean? Like, break that down. Like, how honesty has you not holding the bag. What bag are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? Well, you remember the Erykah Badu song from back in the days? You know what I'm saying? What was the track? The Bag Lady. You know what I'm saying? Where you got all that baggage, that drama, those problems. You know what I'm saying? Like all of those insecurities, all of those negative things that you carry with you. You know what I'm saying? That you create when it comes to the interactions you have in your life and how they create collateral damage into other people's lives because of your lack of. You know what I'm saying? And that just comes down to not being authentic and lacking honesty. Like the reason why you have all this stress and you're not able to feel comfortable with outcomes of situations is because you got this big old guilty sign hanging around your neck like a big dookie rope chain from back in 86. You know what I'm saying? And that's 1986 for any of y'all that, more millennium. But all you old school cats know exactly what I'm talking about when I was to drop that 1986 dookie rope chain analogy. But that's you with the big guilty sign, and it's just so apparent. But just to go a little further into my feelings on this, this whole world is based, in my opinion, on lies. And there has to be a high degree of compromise if you was to use, in a kindly way of speaking about government and politics. You know what I'm saying? Because when it comes to these governments and politics, like, there's so many different people that you need to appease in some form, as much as you can be disagreeable with their the level of their moral compassion or lack of. But you don't want to create an extreme situation where violent aggression becomes most necessary and practiced. But if a lot of people were empathetic, humble and honest and compassionate towards others, then you wouldn't have all of these situations. But guess what? You do. And why? Because there's a lack of honesty again. Because, if you are honest, then you don't even have to feel guilty about holding the bag. Because, you know what I'm saying, you don't even identify with that bag. Like, you don't even want it. I made an analogy about Atlas. We all know about Atlas, the guy that holds the globe on his shoulders. Like, really think about it. Like, when you look at his face, he's supposed to be strong, but he's straining to keep this world on his shoulders above his head. He's straining. Look at it. Look it up, man. Show me a picture where he's happy, please. I ain't even worried about it because it doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? But this world, is full of lies and problems. You know what I'm saying? It's full of lies. You know what I'm saying? And through this world being full of lies, people learned and lied to me. You know what I'm saying? Because they born into lies, and then they wind up being a slave to these lies, and then passing these lies on, to their to other generations, because it just passes down to generation, just through social understanding of, how this from how this world operates. But then through people lying to me and me becoming so frustrated through being lied to, I wound up compromising myself and living a life of lies myself. I never knew truth, so how am I able to practice truth when all I've been dealing with my whole life is lies? And then it hit a point to where something specific happened, where a serious lie was brought in front of me. And it was the lie that I told myself that I was a cool dude. And I wasn't, because I was a scumbag. You know what I'm saying? And because I was never honest, then I always wound up holding this heavy bag of guilt right with me. You know what I'm saying? And I know all of you could dig, you know what I'm saying? Because this is just real talk. This is just straight drop. This is uncut. This is pure. This is pure drop right here that I'm giving y'all. So let's, I got sick and tired of the lies. That's what it came. I got so sick and tired of being sick and tired that I was like, look, when I looked at that man in the mirror, I was like, yo, you the problem. You know what I'm saying? You are a liar, and because of these lies, like, everything wound up colliding and becoming like an avalanche. First it just started off in the beginning as like a little small pebble, but eventually those lies continue to roll and roll and roll and roll, and then they just compound, and then next thing you have an avalanche, and then everything just collides, and then it's all disaster. Everything's wiped out. Life gone. You know what I'm saying? You lucky if you still got the physical in check, because most of you are going to be checked out, and you ain't even listening to Sensei Fouché talk about this game right here. Lies destroy lives, your life, and it collides into other people's life. And then you get mad because, they're so frustrated by having to deal with the baggage that you brought along with you secretly. You know what I'm saying? Because you ain't let them know or brought it in the door in front of them. You know what I'm saying? You just kind of kept it tucked away and didn't be transparent walking through the door. You know what I'm saying? You had to kind of, slide it when no one was looking. And next thing you know, it starts to, slowly expose itself because it can't stay trapped. Lies never stay trapped long at all. They wind up exposing themselves because, they thirsty to be seen. Or not even they thirsty to be seen, but they're so ignorant into their immaturity that they're going to wind up exposing themselves. I mean, I collided my problems into a lot of people's lives because the lack of honesty. You know what I'm saying? My daughter's mother, God bless the dead. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace, stay in peace. More than anything, stay in peace. But, I could talk what ifs all day long. Like, yeah, what if you did this and was right and had everything straight? and you was honest. But how you tell somebody that you have serious addictions with, not only alcohol, which she was game with, but also heavier chemical substances when it comes to cocaine, crack cocaine, and all those things. You know what I'm saying? But that's not something you just tell somebody when you introduce them, when you introduce yourself. You know what I'm saying? Anybody out there knows, for the most part, you trying to sell yourself like a used car salesman trying to sell a lemon. Like you trying to get yourself into someone else's possession because you're desperate. You know good, but you need to belong to someone because, the isolation is uncomfortable. Everybody wants to be needed. But where's your value? You know what I'm saying? Like even antiques have a certain prestige that attracts, certain people that appreciate, classics. But if you a broke down, rusted classic, you know what I'm saying? I mean, let's say bad analogy when it comes to what we was talking about before, but let's say everything under the hood is garbage, you know what I'm saying? But you just fix the outside and make it look, real attractive, for the salesmanship. But underneath, that it's a whole bunch of junk. But you sell it, you know what I'm saying, as if it's this, classic fine running antique. Look at it. Doesn't it look beautiful? It's gonna run even better. But it's no good. And that was me, no good. You know good, but you desperate. So you try to sell yourself hoping that you could change. But the reality is you really ain't going to change because, being in that relationship is going to wind up creating a complacency, but you still damaged. So the first time something kind of goes wrong and your anxiety starts to, reflect, then you're going to wind up starting to expose. Things are going to start to leak, but you're going to feel mad about it, no different than I, because I wasn't honest and I was holding that big heavy bag of guilt. And she had a right to be mad at me, and I really thought about it through the years. And soon after, I was still, finger pointing and blaming. And in the reality, it wasn't getting me nowhere because I was still stuck in the same situation to where I was an absentee father. I was a father that abandoned his child. And then that's when I looked at that man in the mirror and was like, yo, you a liar. Like, why don't you figure out how to tell the truth and maybe something good might happen? Why don't you do that? Like, do that. That right there. That's how they say, like, listening to the video. Yeah, that right there. So I challenged myself to be more honest. And, where I was working at the time, there was this young lady and, younger than me. I think I was still like maybe in my mid-40s, early like 44, 43, 44. But I found her pretty attractive and I had to let her know one day because I was scared. I had to build up the courage to be like, look, you probably have a dude and I'm really not probably your style or speed, but, I like you. You know what I'm saying? And told her that, I didn't feel confident because, I had some things that I need to figure out and work on. And I was straight up with her. Like, I got things going on back east I have to figure out with my daughter. And until I get that figured out, I can't commit seriously to anyone because my first commitment is getting that figured out. And that was, what I told everybody. And I was honest. Because there were certain females, they wanted something more. And I told them, like, look, I know you're interested, but I'm not able to do that for you because me trying to help you raise your kid when I'm not raising my kid, that's hypocritical. And she is going to be mad at me and has a right to be mad at me if I did that because that happened to me when I was young. And I'm not trying to repeat the cycle. And I'm not trying to hold that back. So lying, let me tell you all, so when I decided to be honest, things started to, go my way, because authenticity, is your greatest asset into attractiveness. You know what I'm saying? Your authentic self is going to sell you more than the fake self. It's going to appreciate a whole lot longer than depreciate with all that fakeness. So in the reverse, I'm gonna use my daughter's mother as an example again, with the honesty thing. You know what I'm saying? Because when she was struggling in Atlanta before coming out to where I'm at in Rapid City, South Dakota, because by this time, I have a foundation, I'm stable, everyone's going through things, but I'm able to maturely deal with things that I'm going through and not coward from having to face, these situations. I don't want to call it problems because I'm solution oriented more than problem based. But before her coming here, I told her like straight up, like, look, you still have some issues trying to, kick this alcohol thing. Like, you're an over excessive drinker, and I'm not trying to be dating like a pass out drunk. You know what I'm saying? I don't do drunk women. And, I'll try to help you out as far as getting you on your feet and encouraging you to go beyond this over excessive drinking. But yeah, I can't do the drunk woman thing. You know what I'm saying? And she may have took it for granted, and I was still drinking at the time. Matter of fact, to keep it most real, I told myself before I even told anybody else, because I had to keep it real with myself, and I didn't tell anybody till after the fact, but I told myself that I will stop drinking the minute that this woman, my daughter's mom, and I'm not trying to speak disrespectfully, but she was compromising my lifestyle as far as my residential peace by, this uncontrolled drinking habit. And it was starting to reflect bad with my neighbors, because everybody that knew me just knew me as, low key business. You know what I'm saying? Go to work, do my business, take care of my business. And, sometimes I'll be around and I'll socialize, but, I stay to myself and, kind of keep my own peace. But, she couldn't fulfill her commitment. For me, I'm still taking care of my daughter and, doing everything that I needed to do as far as, what I promised her before she agreed to come out here and have me assist in her trying to get her feet stable again. And I didn't feel guilty, upon her leaving or, kind of being salty about me being firm in, how I felt. And why? Because I was honest. I didn't deceive her. I was straight up. So I'm not going to feel guilty for holding the bag, because there was none. And that leads into the next lady that I was dating right after her. And some people in current days like, too fast. But I'm like, look, I spent 5 years single, fixing everything. It's easy to say, you're confused and you don't know what you want and you have to reevaluate. And I'm like, look, I know exactly what I want. And it's just being brave enough to put yourself out there and re-explore and do better in what you learned from your last experience. You know what I'm saying? So with this lady, when I met her and we worked together, and she showed a great interest in me, and I returned that interest back. And we, had a moment and shared that with one another. And I told her, before we even go forward, I have to let you know, like, my daughter just came. She met my daughter. My daughter used to visit at the job. And I told her, like, yeah, her mom is still living at my place, and I feel extremely uncomfortable, and she should be leaving, sometime soon. I don't want to throw her out there, you know what I'm saying? But I've been letting it be known as we've been moving on, like, I think it's time for you to kind of, find your own foundation, because, you're uncontrolled behavior is starting to collide into, my world. You know what I'm saying? So I told the lady, like, look, I laid everything out, um, open, completely transparent. Like, I don't want you to feel duped into being involved in something that you didn't have 100% information having before you made a decision. And at the moment, she appreciated the honesty, of course, you know what I'm saying? And I wanted that to be, returned. And, longer story short, when that relationship started to move forward, that lady had so many insecurities and secrets that wasn't completely exposed at the beginning, to where her insecurities and the way that she moved socially in the places that we coexisted in, I started to compromise the people that I worked with, because we worked at the same place, different departments, but I have a higher position, within the dietary department in this assisted living facility, working long time kitchen and culinary, you know what I'm saying? And she was working with the nurses station. But, we had to work along with, the nurses, of course, because we all servicing the residents, the elderly residents. But, when she wasn't able to socially deal professionally with her coworkers and was creating personal problems with these coworkers that wound up having her job taken away from her, like I said, that was starting to compromise my world. And I even slightly defended her. I couldn't defend her all the way, because I knew that she had a big part to play in, what wound up happening. And I explained this to her along the way, giving, slight suggestions before strongly imploring, knowing and seeing how this whole thing is moving. But, don't take my experience as word, just disregard. Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I have a lot of serious experience, and I have a lot of stories that I definitely don't feel proud of telling, to just back up the things that I know. Because I always say I talk about what I know, not what I don't know. And if I don't know it, I'm going to figure it out. And if I don't need to, I know how to leave it alone. Trust. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that honesty. She wound up cheating and then lying about this pregnancy for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. I could speculate all day long. But then, of course, it got exposed and it collided into my world. The child wasn't mine. I didn't even think it was mine like 2 months going in, but there were so many other factors. I didn't want to be impulsively immature in how I attacked the conversations. And there was one moment where this lady tried to fabricate this problem with my daughter, and not knowing that I had my eyes closed but was alert. I was supposed to be sleeping in the living room area next to where my daughter was, because the son that she had needed a lot of attention early in his life. So me being, a very, what I felt at the time, a stand-up guy, being a father, like, I'm willing to help out. Like, I have to put in the effort. So, for you to get rest, I'm going to stay with son. Next thing you know, or she was staying with son or whatever. It doesn't matter. The real specifics doesn't matter. I was in the same location when she created this scene. And then when I came to, or so she thought, from sleep, but I was alert, she said that my daughter said this, that, and the other, so on and so forth. And I'm like, yo, you have no idea that I was awake this whole time and just hearing this play out, because you played this card a few days ago, and I didn't 100% believe it, but I didn't have the complete proof. But now that she was exposed, she got embarrassed and was mad, and said a whole bunch of disrespectful things and then wound up walking out the door like, yo, the kid ain't yours. I'm like, all right, thank you. Now I need to move on to the next step because now I need to talk to some people with lawyers and get the parental rights dropped from the birth certificate. I wound up doing that in 3 months. Flat. Immediately. Done. Like once that whole thing finalized out, like I already knew what I would have to do before it actually happened, preparing myself for the moment when it happened. And when it happened, then I went into assertive mode. And I didn't feel guilty. And that's why I wasn't, if anything, I was most upset that, you involved my daughter into this long-standing fabrication for whatever reason of trying to have me compromise my life and overextending myself to a child that isn't mine. And you knew this. And I was able to move forward from it, once everything kind of processed out with her impulsively leaving, so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So good riddance. But I didn't feel guilty, and I still don't have problems attached to my life because I no longer hold that big guilty sign around my neck. You know what I'm saying? Problems are always going to come to you if you are not honest. If you are not honest with yourself, you definitely won't be honest with other people. And that's why you have these failed relationships all the time, over and over again, is because you have baggage. And because you holding that bag, you are guilty in some form. It doesn't even matter what percentage, because you wasn't 100% honest. So forget about the other person. I mean, they was in their own regard not honest neither, but neither was you. But you still holding some form of a bag. Which moves me into third relationship. Because right after that, and I was dealing with that situation, like that lady was already gone out of my life for almost maybe a month when I introduced to this other person. And when I introduced to this other person, I told him straight up everything that I just went through and everything that I had to do and what I was going to accomplish. And like I said, in 3 months, I took care of all that. But I told her from the beginning and was completely transparent about who I was, what I was dealing with, and what I was planning to do. And I asked her, like, yo, are you with it? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want you to feel like you didn't have the full disclosure of information when making the decision and choice of whether you want to deal with me. You know what I'm saying? And she agreed. Now, in the reverse, as things played out, there were things that she did not fully disclose. And being that you didn't fully disclose those things, now there started to be a problem because I didn't sign up for things that I was unaware of. And I'm not going to feel guilty because I'm not holding the bag. You are. I was completely honest. I've been fulfilling my commitments. Everything that I've said that I am going to do, I have done. Now I'm frustrated. Now I'm over the hill when it comes to the overwhelming journey that this relationship has given me. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. And I can't do it no more. I fought the longest fight, but the obstacles and the uphill is unbearable for most, if not all people. Because you have a heavy bag that you have not emptied before you got with me. I emptied all my baggage, so I'm not going to feel guilty about holding the bag because I don't have it. It doesn't exist. But every single time you are dishonest with yourself. It's easy for you to be dishonest with other people, and you will be holding that heavy bag of guilt, and it will make you mad, it'll make you sad, it'll make you go through every single emotional feeling. Because that's exactly what that big old dookie rope chain size guilty sign around your neck represents. That bag of problems, that bag of troubles. And you wasn't honest in what you was holding on to, so you tried to hide it, but you kept feeding it on the slide, and then it continued to grow, and then it exposed itself, as it eventually does always. I mean, the last thing that I'm gonna bring up, and this is a relationship with a job, because when I came into this last corporate job that I had in the cooking profession, I mean, my back and my knees can't have me stand up in the kitchen full time anymore. Documented medically, getting checked out maybe 5 years ago. But when I walked into that position, and as we were moving along into me being in that position, I was always communicating with the management and letting them know as things went along, the things that were in a greater point of disagreement because of these manipulative people in these other departments that were trying to create unnecessary issues by slander, by using untruthful slander in order to try to stain the reputation of my department and my coworkers. And I stood up for the guy that wound up having a venomous disagreement with the temporary head nurse of the nursing department the night before. When I went in the next day, I heard about it. My supervisor was kind of wishy-washy. I mean, she was basically complaining to me, but not really standing up for Guy. And I'm like, man, you're supposed to be our leader, and you can't even stand up for dude, and you knew him longer than me. You brought him into the job from where y'all used to be. But I got cool with the dude and knew that he wasn't a really confident communicator and wasn't strong at communicating. So then I wound up speaking up, not only for him, but for our department, because I'm not going to let you try to assassinate, our reputation by trying to stain our character and insulting our professionalism. And I didn't what they would call niggerish. You know what I'm saying? I didn't do none of that. I kept it as composed as I could in having this exchange with management because of how this me addressing this directly wound up exploding. So 3 hours after I was on shift and put away the whole inventory truck of food items, they came back in the kitchen and took my ID, as far as my job ID and all my access stuff with the keys to the kitchen and everything, and escorted me off the property. And I processed it for, maybe about 3 hours or so. But realistically, I felt relieved because I'm like, man, the more and more I got into this thing, it started to be uncomfortable being amongst a bunch of manipulators and liars and con artists, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't feel guilty because I wasn't holding the bag. And I strongly implore for all of you people that are going through these extreme issues, and you're probably not going to pay attention to what I'm telling you anyway, but this is that straight drop, you know what I'm saying? This that uncut. And the reason why all of these relationships keep failing and you feel so uncomfortable after these failed relationships is because you, in some form or weight of ownership, was holding the bag. Me, in the moment that I had to go through the whole experience, yeah, it could have been avoided if things were truthful from the beginning, but they weren't. And now we at where we at. But I'm not, beating myself up like, I'm not worthy, because I have no guilt. I was extremely transparent. So I'm not going to be feeling guilty like I was holding the bag, because it doesn't exist. I gave away that chunky jewelry. I no longer feel the need to have this big old sign of guilt hanging around my neck like it's fashionable. So I'm going to tell all y'all real quick, like, honesty, lack of honesty will always have you holding the bag. So be honest. If you really want to let go of that bag and gravitate to things that agree more than disagree, because you're a disagreeable person, and you know what I'm saying, you're going to highly attract those kind of people in continued succession, instead of it being a lesson learned and being able to grow forward from that. You're going to cycle into a different version of that for sure, because you are a liar, you are dishonest, and you are a guilty bag holder. And that's all I got. You know what I'm saying? Be smooth in unity. 1.